with their ways of working. There we go. Thank you, Maria. Today we're going to be hearing about Suncorp's journey with their ways of working change, and they've called their ways of working momentum. So you'll start to hear all about this thing momentum, and we'll start to get into that and explain that a little bit more as we're going. The way that we're looking to run the meetup today, or have the meetup facilitated, is a bit more of a fireside chat. I know Lauren and Will quite well, so I'll be asking them some questions. They'll be responding. They may throw things at me, and we'll cover off a few aspects of the journey itself. Hoping to do that in roughly 30 to 40 minutes. And then what we're hoping to do is open it up for audience questions, comments. So my colleague Maria will be monitoring the chat, and so please feel free to add your questions in as we go, and then we'll definitely leave some time at the end to be able to cover off the questions. So for those of you that I haven't met before, or I haven't had the pleasure of working with or coming across, my name's Mark Payne. I'm the principal for Sooner Safer Happier Asia Pacific, working with my colleague Maria Muir, who's a partner for Sooner Safer Happier Asia Pacific. I've had the absolute pleasure for a little while now working with Suncorp on their ways of working journey, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation that we're about to have around the journey that they're on. Very lucky to have two wonderful guests that I've had the absolute pleasure of working with over my time at Suncorp. So we have Lauren Lance, who's the accountable executive for Momentum at Suncorp. So Lauren, in a second, I'll get you to introduce yourself. And we also have Will Carey-Hill, who's the Momentum design lead, who's kind of the brains behind everything that's happening in the Momentum journey at the moment. So Lauren, Will, I might throw to you guys first if you wanted to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And I have to say it's an absolute pleasure working with you as well as yourself, Maria. I know it's been a long journey so far, but really thank you for the opportunity to be able to share some of the amazing work that we've achieved together and with the broader group. Thanks everyone for joining us. So Lauren Lance, I work within the enterprise delivery practice here at Suncorp. Our role is we home all of the delivery professionals across the group. So our change managers, our BAs, our Scrum Masters, our PMs all sit within chapters within our practice, and we're accountable for building their capability, investing in how we execute change here. We're also accountable for the execution of the change portfolio across insurance, technology, as well as our corporate functions. So I've been with Suncorp for about 10 years, always working in and around projects and change. Actually started my career in change management, so organisational change management. I did work with AMP and CBA before I came to Suncorp. So yeah, change is my passion. Projects is my passion. I say it's my blood. I just love the buzz of it, and love the fact that I've been able to build a really successful career around it. I'm also a mum of three, so I've got 3 little kids at home. So it's fair to say, yeah, life's a bit crazy. Lovely crazy, but crazy.
Over to you, Will.
To me. Well, firstly, I'm hardly the brains. I saw Lauren took offense to that, and rightly so. I guess I get to take credit if it works, and if it doesn't, I move slowly away from Lauren and let her broad shoulders take all the responsibility. But it's been a pleasure working with Lauren on this, and first encountered Mark and Maria back in the Bank West days. So it's great to see some colleagues that we worked with on that program, and back then it was we were trying to figure out sort of where banking was going, and we knew Bank West wasn't quite big enough to sort of be amongst the really large banks. It wasn't small enough to sort of go as quickly as the fintechs, and so we had to kind of figure out where's banking going and what do we do about it. So first work with Mark and Maria there, and many people on this call as well. So great to see some familiar faces that worked with us on that experiment. And we did that experiment, and we didn't mess too much up. It actually went okay. So
Too much.
so then they gave us another chance to do that in New Zealand as well with ASB. So great to see some colleagues from New Zealand on here as well, and work with Maria. And that's where I first encountered John as well. So it was great to get some exposure to the Sooner Safer Happier crew there. After that, went on to the Bank of New Zealand. And then when Suncorp was looking to sort of take their next step, luckily, some of the leaders that were involved I'd worked with in the past, and we got together and said, hey, I just love these types of challenges. So I was very up for getting involved in that journey. So that's how I sort of came to be involved at Suncorp. I was kind of patient zero for Suncorp Australia on this wild and wacky journey that we're about to tell you about. So really looking forward to telling you everything we've learned, the scars we have to show for our time, and equally some of the green shoots of success that we're starting to see. So very excited to be with all of you.
Thank you very much, Lauren and Will. And for the audience, we have the right people on this call, so so please listen to what they have to say. Please put your questions, thoughts, and comments in the chat, and we'll be able to go a little bit deeper on things that are really important to everyone on this call. First question, but I might direct it to you, Will, to start with. But Lauren, please feel free to jump in as required. I mentioned Suncorp has this thing called momentum. What is momentum, and what is the strategic intent behind it? If you could explain that to the audience.
Happy to jump in there, Mark. I think firstly, momentum started out quite organically, and Lauren will touch on this in a little bit. She's got even better context than I do around that. But originally in Australia, we had some Tiger teams that were working in this way. And in fact, Suncorp has a deep, rich history in sort of adaptable ways of working. And Al can touch on that a little better than I can. And then after that, our New Zealand colleagues really took up the baton and drove forward in terms of trying to figure out how they could evolve their ways of working. And they were actually the first to come up with the overall momentum name. And they've done such a great job that it just made sense that we would continue on that path here in Australia as well, and as part of the broader group. And I think it's one really important that, in my experience, most successful sort of transformational change starts quite organically and has to have some people who really desire positive change. So that was certainly the case here at Suncorp. And then secondly, I think it's important that you have a brand. As we know, culture eats everything for breakfast and lunch. And so it really is about people and taking them on this journey. So it's important that you come up with a brand for your ways of working and what it is that you're trying to do. One, so that you stay kind of agnostic of any methodology. That was keen in our transformation, was not to get too tied to any one specific way of working, but to bring in the best aspects of everything that we could learn from other organizations. Secondly, because wherever you are in your organization, your culture has evolved to be exactly what it needs to be. When we first started our first gig in Australia, we then went to New Zealand and thought, we know what to do. We've got the playbook. We've got exactly how you would execute on this. And the culture in New Zealand said, nah, we're good. We don't want anything you figured out. We've got our own culture and history that's really important to us. So it was a great lesson. And in fact, the approach there was very much honoring the rich cultural history. So we really had to learn about how we evolved the approach to really suit the needs there. And so in working with the great Pat Reed, she helped us to coin the phrase of learn from everyone and copy no one. So you've got to kind of pick up on all the lessons learned, but you've got to really come up with your own view of how you're going to take things forward.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. The brand's really important. And we've taken an approach to really purposely change language that we use around our ways of working and around change. And we did that because it's important that you signal the change. It is hard for people to get their head around. It's another element it's another change that people need to kind of get their head around. But what it does is it forces a shift in mindset and behaviours, and it really signals the difference between yesterday and today, the new world. So I think the brand momentum, and then really purposely changing our language and our language that underpin ways of working, was quite a purposeful decision, Mark, so that we can get the cultural mindset behaviour shifts that you need to underpin any of these transformations.
Brilliant. That's amazing. In addition to the cultural and mindset changes, is there anything that you can talk about around the executive leadership team and things that maybe problems this was attempting to solve at their level, or any insights at that ELT level? Because often we know that these changes are really driven and supported from above. So yeah, anything you can share in relation to that, Laura?
Yeah, look, I think Will's summary around the fact that this program started organically is exactly that. And the leadership support and leadership buy-in for this is also something that's grown organically. We absolutely were faced with challenges as a company. We knew that we needed to be able to focus on customer value better. We needed to get better customer outcomes, customer obsession being at our core, and transforming our ways of working to enable true customer obsession. So our executive team was clear on that. Like everyone, we have cost pressures, and the need to deliver outcomes as effectively, efficiently, productive as possible is another key driver. The cost of change is a huge investment across Suncorp, and the need to be able to get the best value out in the most productive way is another driver as well. And we did have challenges around, not deep-rooted challenges, but our change team's kind of happiness was also at the core of this as well. We'd sit in retros, we'd sit in kind of, PIRs and all that sort of stuff, and people would say, it's just really hard to do change here. So we needed to kind of double down on that. And that was all very, very clear to the executive team. What it ended up kind of forming organically was the program of work momentum. And as Will touched on, it started with a COVID response, which was we needed to get better value out the door quickly in our digital space. So we created these tiger teams that Will spoke about. The leadership there really broke down the traditional silos created with project teams and created cross-functional teams, and they went great guns. The amount of execution that they were able to get out was really, really, really positive. Of course, then we started to see that success. The executive team saw that success and said, why can't we do this a bit more? The New Zealand business, similar challenges. How do we get better value faster for our customers? And they were the first to embark on the transforming ways of working change, fundamentally looking at agile at scale and labelling it momentum. Again, huge amount of success there. So I think the executives organically go, wow, this is working. Like we need to accelerate and put more focus on it. Then here in Australia, we started with a couple of pioneer value streams, and we call our value streams tribes. It just gave us the ability to test and learn, to pilot without putting kind of the overall delivery and benefits that we needed to deliver within the portfolio at risk. And it gave us an ability to really test and learn here in Australia. So yeah, look, I think Mark, incremental change, focus on the small wins, take small steps, and then continuously tie it back to the overall objectives, which is customer value, faster delivery, more effective delivery, and happier teams.
Awesome, absolutely.
And then the support comes.
Yeah, and some real nuggets of gold there, Lauren, Will. So I really appreciate that. That piece around constant iteration, constant learning, and then connecting it to the greater outcome. And then those proof points of senior leaders is just so important. So some real good insights there. You mentioned the pioneer tribes
Yep.
when they started. That's roughly the point that I started with Suncorp as well, not too long after they were stood up. And Will, I remember you and I talking about 3 macro questions on how we go from pioneer tribes, to transforming the organization. And those three questions were, what is the work? What is the workforce? And what is the system of work? Can you explain to our audience members what those three questions mean and how it's been tied into, I guess, the approach from a Suncorp perspective?
Absolutely, Mark, thanks. And I think starting with the first one, what is the work? We thought about that in three different ways. Firstly, we wanted to better connect our strategy and our execution. And I see Jody on the line here, with one of our Pioneer Tribe leaders. And I remember the first time I encountered her, we started with, well, let's look at your work. And she was like, well, how are you going to come in and look at anything about our work? I've been looking at it for a long time. And luckily, she was very open to us coming in, because I think you've got to start with what's the work you're there to deliver. And you've got to really scrutinize that. And you've got to have a lot of deep, rich conversations about what work you are trying to do and how you've connected that golden thread of value that links your strategy to execution. And luckily, Jody spent a lot of time with us really looking at what's the work we're trying to do. So both strategically, where do we want to go and how do we get there? But then how do we connect execution to our strategy? Again, those sound like simple concepts, but you just cannot spend enough time on that piece there. And then within that, that'll help you define what's the value you want to deliver, and that'll emerge the value streams as well. So what are the ways in which you want to organize yourself to deliver that value? So in scrutinizing the work, it should start to become clear where are the opportunities for value, and then how do we align to deliver that value. And then I think the third thing there is, a lot of people talk about scaling out a model or scaling out ways of working. And the first thing you have to do is descale the work. That is, look, I can tell you from both lived experience, and we know this from, any of the good information that's been put out there. There's no point in building these super highways and then just putting a bunch of old cars on those super highways and clogging them up. So you have to be ruthless in your prioritization of that work, and really making sure you've descaled the work enough that it's going to flow well through your system. So that's what is the work, critical, start with that. Out of that, you're going to, if you've done that question well, you're going to start to go, well, how are we possibly going to deliver all this work? How are we going to prioritize it? How are we going to optimize for flow? How are we going to deliver at both at pace within the control we want to? And those are all the questions that you need to answer in your system of work. You need to design a system of work that enables you to deliver on the work that you've got to deliver. So again, can't really spend enough time working on that. And in fact, the first time I encountered John Smart, the one thing he said to me was, can you believe there's all these organizations out there that have tens and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of change investment, and no one is looking at the system of work? And so I think that's a big moment of clarity, is we've been in these functional silos, and sort of everyone owns the system of work, so no one owns the system of work. So one of the great shifts at Suncorp is just more and more attention being paid to the system that work flows through. And credit to the people at Suncorp here that have really bought into that and understand why that is just so important. So that's the system of work. And if you do that well, and in application, what that means, that's looking at your operating model, that's looking at your delivery model, that's looking at your ways of working. So how are you set up and organized to deliver on your work? If you do that well, what that typically does, that uncovers more gaps in your capability. It doesn't mask gaps. It actually starts to uncover more. And that brings you to the question of, what is the right workforce? What's the workforce that we need to be able to deliver on that? And so those gaps are good, because seeing those gaps more clearly and more transparently allows you to start to address them more effectively. So again, it's a bit of an anti-pattern. Sometimes we set up to the capability we have, not the capability we need. And so it's that classic case of what got you here won't get you there. We need to know, where do we need to go? What's the work we need to do? What's the system we need to do it? And then how do we enable our people to do that? And guess what? As we saw through COVID, your people can't step up until you've asked them to step up. And you'll be amazed every time I've been through a process like this, the way your people respond to the challenge. So that's the last part around what is the workforce, is setting the challenge for your people and then watching them rise to that challenge through that process. Lastly, I'll just say that leadership is so critical to this whole process. And I think you'd have a good perspective on that side of things.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mark, I reckon there's a fourth question, which is
Yep.
like, what is the mindset, right? Because I think we've definitely focused on the work, prioritizing the work, and then the right teams and the right structures to be able to deliver the work. But we've equally focused on what is the mindsets, what's the behaviours, and importantly, the leadership mindset and behaviours that need to underpin the change as well. I think that, I talked to my team about hashtag fake change, and that's like the change that where you just you change the processes, you might change a couple of job titles, change people's roles, but unless you actually get underneath the way that they think, which mindset eventuates in behaviour, it's all fake, right? So I think the other question, and Mark, you've really helped us with Will shape this, is kind of what are the core mindsets that we need to be able to embody to be successful. It's the longest pole in the tent too, I think, is the other point. Like, it's the hardest change to achieve, and you kind of need to acknowledge that and keep investing in it and keep reminding people, whether it's the squad members' mindset all the way through to the exec leadership mindset. It's really important. So we've defined 4 of our momentum mindsets: pace over perfection, customer obsession, trust and transparency, and empowered teams. And I think at any point that anyone will give me a mic, I spend a lot of time talking about this, because the 4th and really important question is, like, how do we need to change the way we think?
Again, some real nuggets of gold there. So thank you both for what you shared there. It's also really great to hear the warts and all element of it as well. So the honesty and the transparency of what's going on, which leads me hopefully into a nice segue into the next question or thought bubble around me. And I might direct this to you, Lauren. We've spoken about New Zealand. We've spoken about the tiger teams. We've spoken about the pioneer tribes. We've been answering these questions as we've been going to really start to shift Suncorp. Where is Suncorp at on its journey, in your opinion, as the accountable exec for this program of work?
Well, I think the summary, and then I'll get into the detail, is we've started. That's where we're at. We've started. Now, I know that I don't want to undersell the years of work that we've done to get there, but I think it's important in the context of the fact that this is long-term change that we're trying to drive, and we've started. It's the hardest step, I think, but we've started, and we've got a long way to go. I can say, just to build on your earlier question, Mark, around kind of where's the executive mindset here, where's the priority, transforming our ways of working in momentum is a strategic enabler of Suncorp's strategy. So it's absolutely core in terms of what we are trying to achieve here. And I think that's really representative of how important this is for Suncorp. So I think that's the first important point to make. It's critical to deliver our strategy, which is excellent for us. So like I said, we did a couple of pioneer tribes. We learnt a lot. We absolutely learnt a lot. And we embarked on a process over about 12 months to incorporate, give or take a bit, but about 80% of our change portfolio into value stream delivery. So this is across insurance, across our bank. Obviously New Zealand was already in. To underpin that, we went through quite a significant operating model change. We restructured and organised ourselves into chapters, practices, platforms, and then reallocated people into value streams. We looked at some roles definition. We changed those so that we could, again, symbol the change of a different type of role, a different mindset that was needed. But it was also really important to organise ourselves to have the right foundation to then enable the transformation. We doubled down on our system of work. I know that was one of your passions, Mark, for a long time. And we significantly changed the way that we like our end-to-end processes and the way that we deliver here, our ways of working. It's fair to say it's an MVP one. I think definitely keep iterating, but it was a huge leap in the right direction. So where are we now? We've taken the first step, which is good, and it's the hardest step. Our focus is absolutely on listening, deep listening, measuring, and then having really targeted improvement plans in with our teams to help them kind of be embedded in the model. So one of the streams that Will leads in the program is called our Brilliant at Basics, and it's fundamentally doing that. It's doubling down on our ways of working, our mindsets, the different processes and practices that we need within our value streams and our platforms, our technology teams to be successful. It's absolutely underpinned by metrics. It's fairly manual right now, but they're there and they're metrics, and frequent like self-assessed maturity assessments within the tribes. What that then gives us is a tailored work program that our coaches are able to work kind of hand in glove with each of the delivery teams just to continuously improve their ways of working. We then, of course, elevate that up to the program level, to the enterprise level, and what that enables us to do is to pick off, top three ticket items to improve the model, and then the team that Will leads double downs on that and actually improves the model and then helps execute and kind of embed that across all of the different teams. I think it's fair to say we've got 3 key focuses at the moment. First of all, it's transforming our PMO and our processes and our governance practices, and Mark and Maria are well embedded in this with us, and thank you for all of the guidance that you're giving us. But we fundamentally need to change our kind of traditional project portfolio management practices to one that is much more focused on value and value realisation in line with an agile, a fundamentally agile kind of way of working. So this, of course, is kind of, again, it's about work processes, it's about data, it's about insights, it's about the conversation we have around the portfolio, and then that comes through into capabilities and skill sets within the team, and of course the mindsets that we have that underpin that as well. So that's the first one. The second focus is really getting all of the enterprise into the model. So this is focused on like that 20% of the change program that I said that we haven't quite picked up yet, getting everybody into the model, aligning a quarterly planning cadence across the organisation so that we can get real clarity of priority and prioritisation on a quarterly basis. And then the third, which was already touched on, is our leadership. There has to be continuous improvement and focus in upskilling our leaders to operate in the model. So I'd say, Payne, our approach stays the same. It's always pace over perfection. We kind of choose a couple of elements to kind of go deep on and to fix in the model versus trying to strive for perfection across the whole lot and end to end. One, because that's not realistic, but we'll probably fail and not get anything in. And I think it's important just to be really honest with ourselves that this is new territory for Suncorp. So we need to take a test and learn approach, and we need to deeply listen to our people and watch the metrics so that we know where we need to focus on next.
Again, I keep using those nuggets of gold, but some really key topics there and items around people either embarking on this or mid this point or, reviewing where you're at. You mentioned a couple of times there metrics and measuring elements there. So definitely encourage people to take that one on board. Will, if you don't mind, and as long as it doesn't break any commercial sensitivities, is there anything we can double click into around that measures and metric space? I know it's early, as Lauren indicated, but what's it telling you? What are the things that you're focusing on? How is it helping you determine the work? And Lauren gave us her top 3. Is there any way that you could kind of give us an indication of the Brilliant at the Basics top 3 that Lauren mentioned you're working on?
Absolutely. So maybe we'll try and give you some platinum or some diamond diamonds here, Mark, just to mix it up for you.
Love it.
At least some quality iron, anyways. So I think we looked at sort of 3 levels of measurement, and we took that approach, and I'll sort of go through why we did, because we kind of had to go on a bit of a measurement journey throughout this process. So the first thing we looked at was kind of what I would call input measures, because they were the easiest for us to get quality measurement as we transitioned into our new system. And so that's things like team health and our team ways of working across the system. And then we also did an assessment of our overall business agility, which I would highly recommend. I remember we did it right at the time as we were transitioning to the new model, so there was a sort of a bit of a flinch of pain, like, oh, we've just introduced a lot of change pain into our system. Do we really want to be measuring at this point in time? And we absolutely did, because we wanted to get a good baseline. And what that told us was, one, credit to all the teams involved, but team health actually went up over the first few months, and went up around between like 8 and 10% from already a pretty good base. So credit to all the teams who really got on board and embraced what we were trying to do, and all the leaders involved for really aligning to the mindsets and trying to create a fantastic environment to work in. It was, in saying that, I won't say that it was easy to go through transition. As anyone who's led major change knows, it was challenging, and there was a lot of pain along the way through that. But credit to the teams, they absolutely kept their eye on the prize and saw where we were trying to go. So team health has gone up across all of our tribes and platforms collectively. That's the first thing. Then within our key value streams, we're starting to see green shoots of sort of what I would call our output measures. And that means that we're starting to see greater throughput and greater velocity in terms of our delivery. While that can be an anti-pattern at times if you focus a little bit too much on just getting stuff cranked out through the system, it was a key focus for us at Suncorp. We wanted to improve the efficiency of our delivery. Like any delivery organization, we knew there was opportunity for us to get better and to get value in the hands of our customers and our people more quickly. And so we've seen some real green shoots. It varies, but I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of a 30% uptick. So from a throughput and velocity perspective, which at sort of 3 to 4 months on the journey, we are over the moon about in terms of what we've been able to do. Now, some of that comes from the descaling of the work, right? So the fact that we're actually delivering smaller chunks of work kind of shows a more favorable position in terms of some of those throughput metrics. But that's key for us as well, because we wanted to get into smaller units of value so that we could get that value out. As you no doubt will know, with some of the environmental issues we've been facing in the insurance industry, the fact that we've been able to deliver some of our solutions more quickly has been critical to us being able to do things for our customers that we previously wouldn't have been able to do. So such a credit to all the teams that worked on the ground to deliver those solutions, because it was absolutely essential for us to guide some of our teams in Australia and more recently in New Zealand through some very challenging times. So I think that was one of the first kind of early green shoots of a win for the program, and credit to the teams that delivered within it, because they just absolutely went hell-bent for leather at going on those solutions. And it just worked out that it couldn't have been better timing, because it was critical to us being able to guide our customers through some really, really challenging times. And then lastly, our focus is on value and the so what. And what we know there is we've done some early work to set our teams up with OKRs, but the reason I put that last is because we know there's a real capability shift in terms of getting deep capability around defining and measuring value as we shift from kind of a traditional project focus around sort of your traditional project measures into getting really great at understanding what is actually valuable to our people and our customers, and how we can measure that really down to the nth degree. That's just a capability and a muscle that we've already got a lot of great muscle there, but we just want to go even deeper in our muscle in terms of measuring and understanding value. So those are kind of our top 3 areas across Brilliant at the basics.
Amazing, Will. Thank you for those platinum nuggets for the audiences. I really appreciate that. Before I I noticed some questions are starting to come through the chat. There's one that's popped in, which I think is quite important because it actually, I think, will frame how the scale of the change. So I'm just going to read this one out, and I'll throw it to either of you. But can you give us an idea on the magnitude of the change? So are you able to provide the rough numbers of the people involved impacted by the program, plus an example of a value stream and its size and its scope? I don't think there's any commercial sensitivities there, but yeah, if you don't mind sharing, that would be great.
Yeah, I think we targeted roughly about a third of the organization in terms of moving into the new model. And that was simply because, as Lauren said, we were targeting more efficient, more effective change delivery. And so that's what it roughly equated to. It was about a third of the organization. And that encompassed all of the teams that were focused on delivery within our value streams, and then the technology teams that supported that. And then, of course, there's kind of a secondary group that has been heavily involved, and that's the teams that support those teams. So the support functions that sit in and around that. So when you start to get that number out, it starts to get even larger in terms of people that had to just shift their mindset and understand and work into new ways of working. So quite a large area of focus in terms of the change. So you're talking in the neighborhood to 1/3 who are kind of really changing their day-to-day way of working, and then slightly more when you get into who had to shift their mindset in terms of the ways that we deliver and have an understanding of new ways of working. So in terms of the size, I think that's
about
where we're
3,000. Yeah, about 3,000 FTE, and ticking up now in terms of the change impact. I guess the value stream. Like our value streams, again, minimal viable pace over perfection approach. It's not perfectly designed. I wouldn't call them true end-to-end value streams, but they really work for Suncorp's organisational structures right now. So, the Pioneer Tribes as an example, we had one focused on our home claims value stream, one focused on our motor claims value stream. And we pushed all of the change activity through those value streams to make sure that we had really robust backlogs within each of the missions, and we were able to prioritise highest value. We've been able to see some activity kicked up, like picked off the ground there, particularly in the digital space, that we've really struggled to get going outside of this model. And I think breaking down the traditional project teams and just the silos and handoffs that come with that, forming cross-functional teams, the problem solving just went through the roof, right? And just the value of test and learn and being able to iterate to get real change happening quickly was really valuable.
And picking up on that value stream piece, I remember there was quite a bit of debate around what our value stream should be. And as you go through a process like this, and we were very fortunate at the right time, we were able to engage the team from ING, who were one of the first in financial services to do this. And they went, look, we tried it all different ways. And at the end of the day, what our customers wanted was they wanted a home loan. So that became the value stream, home loan. And so luckily we went kind of the same thing, like, what does a customer really want from us? And that's how we ended up aligning the value streams. And as much as that sounds really simple, you have to cut through a lot to get back to what's really important for customers. Because you can understand your business so well that sometimes that can get in the way. But that's how we sort of set up our value streams, was at the end of the day, what does the customer really want from us? And then how do we align our teams in the best way possible to deliver that?
That's great. Thank you, Tim, for sharing that. Before we open it up to questions, Lauren and Will, doing this activity is sometimes therapeutic. It allows you to reflect and see how far you've come on this journey. Before we open up to questions, is there anything that you feel we haven't covered off that, as we've been talking, you think is really important for the audience to hear?
I don't think so. We've just got the boss is saying goodbye for the night. Yeah, we do. He just said, oh, you've got lots of people there. Yeah, we do. that was the CIO, Adam Bennett, saying goodbye because he's going to Brisbane for the rest of the week. We'll tell him you made an appearance. No, look, I think we covered most, Mark. I think, like, if there's a couple of things I just want to be real on, I think it's that there's no one size fits all here, and there's no perfect approach, right? And I think that you really need to be honest with yourself on that front. Like Will said, we have not been religious in terms of any methodology. We've had to take an approach that works for Suncorp, and the organic way that we've built this out meant that we can make sure that it's tailored to each of the parts of the business, and we're okay with that. You know, it needs to work for us. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is, we absolutely, it is absolutely pace over perfection, and then a fail quickly and learn quickly approach across the organisation, which underpins the way that we've built this program and the way we lead this program. I think that's really important. And then I think the third and most important one I keep saying to the team is we just can't high five too early. We can't, like, we can high five all the time, but just don't give us the final high five too early. Like, we've come a really long way, but we need to make sure that we keep our eye on the prize and the reality that we've got a long way to go. I think the other thing is it's not a linear journey, right? Like, you feel like you're on the up and then something happens and you're kind of going backwards, and then you need to pivot and reshape. So one of the most important pieces is that, like, I think that's the continuous education about the fact that this is long-term game. We can't call victory too early. We can't get distracted in the overall mission here, because it is the long haul.
Yeah, I think I would just add, and not just because he gave you an audio cameo, but I would say Adam sort of ducking his head in. The sponsorship you have from executive leadership is just so critical, because it's going to get hard. There are points where you're going to wobble, and we were no different and have been no different and still will be no different going forward. So we just have such great buy-in from leadership to manage through those wobble points, and manage through those points when there's noise coming back from the system and it's getting hard and it's getting challenging, because we're starting to work with our people that on things that change their day-to-day life. So leadership sponsorship, I know, again, it's an obvious one, but we've been so fortunate here. And within that leadership sponsorship, commitment from our leaders to go on the journey. So Lauren's, one of her favorite stories is one of our first encounters, where she was like, Will, I have no idea what you're talking about. What are you on about? And now here she is, just, absolutely nailing all elements of what we've really tackled. So
he was doing his mad scientist thing. Mark, he was up on the whiteboard drawing stuff, talking about his mumbo jumbo, and I was like, stop. What are you talking about? Stop.
So I had the hieroglyphics out, trying to communicate the plan, and it wasn't landing as well as I would hope. But credit to Lauren. The thing that she did was she was like, look, I'm up for the journey. I'm committed to go on this journey with you, Will. I have no clue where you're taking me. I'm sure it will become clear eventually, but I'm committed to it. And I think that's the other thing, is you don't have to know everything. You just have to be committed to going on the journey, and credit to so many leaders that have done that as well. And equally, the likes of Jody, who's on the call, and our coaches
I just saw that chat. She said the same thing to you.
So clearly I have something to do to work on my communication skills, but feedback's a gift, right? And so just credit to our leaders at all levels who've committed to going on that journey, because that's what it takes. It takes a village to really move forward, and we've certainly had that here.
Some great insights again. Maria, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I've been attempting to monitor the chat, but is there anything that you can see, any questions in the chat that we haven't covered off as yet that we can throw at Will and Lauren?
Yeah, I think maybe one to start, because there's a few of them in here around waterfall and momentum, and that mix. Does that exist? How does it work?
Yeah, the reality of that is, yes, it does exist still. And I wouldn't even say it's pure waterfall. It's just kind of tribe-based value stream delivery, and then everything else, right? So we've still got a component of our change investment, which we haven't been able to align properly. We have a really great opportunity now as we shape up next year's investment portfolio to get as much of that into the value streams. And we're making good traction from that front. One of the pieces that Will's looking at in that focus I've said about, getting everyone into the model is like, how do these kind of more traditional programs operate under momentum? And there may be some cases where you have a different, I talk about it being just the risk profile of the program that requires a different level of oversight. That's really what it is, right? And how do we still enable that for some of the more complex, risky, for whatever reason, strategic investments? How do we enable it while not breaking the goodness that comes with value stream delivery? Things like cross-functional teams, things like bringing to the table the right mindsets, behaviours that I keep banging on about, while still being able to manage risk across like a multi-dependency kind of cross-functional program. So we haven't solved it yet, and it definitely does exist. But it's one of our big rocks right now to figure out how does it better come together.
Yeah, and I think as anyone who's been on this journey will know, you'll be in sort of two worlds for a little while as you transition, and I think that's one, not just okay but necessary. And then I think at some point you reach a period of time where when your teams are working across both of those systems, sort of a traditional project delivery and kind of a more adaptive form of delivery, at some point you do have to kind of move the bulk of your work into that single system. You may need to treat the work differently and still govern in a more traditional sense some of your work. And so that makes complete sense that you would have a way of governing your work that reflects the work that you're doing. But for the teams on the ground, you want to ease their pain and give them a single way of working where you can, because it just becomes quite challenging for them if the work is coming to them in one piece of work's shaped like an apple, the other shaped like a banana, and the other one's shaped like a hippopotamus. It becomes really hard for them to actually deliver on the work. So it's some point you want to make it easier for them in terms of just being actually able to deliver on the work, which is what's most important.
Awesome, thank you. So the next grouping of questions is then all around kind of culture and mindset, with the first one being, Lauren, can you please share some examples of the language shift? Because you mentioned language shift. So what words are you deliberately using differently?
Well, I think the first one is stop using the word project and start using the word tribe. Stop using the word team and start using the term squads, and like those sort of really fundamental shifts in our language that it's just symbols, it's labels, it's nothing other than that, but it signals a shift. Like, we're going to leave yesterday behind and we are now going to a new way of working, which is tomorrow. And then I'd say Will and the team spend a lot of time getting our 4 momentum mindsets nailed, and they're very, very purposeful, right? So pace over perfection, absolutely important, and one that a lot of the teams have found hard to get their head around. Are you telling us that we can kind of do this half-hearted? And it's not about that. It's about breaking down work, being able to kind of deliver incremental value. So we really had to do quite a bit of education around that piece. Customer obsession speaks for itself, right? But making sure that that's at the core. We do have a bit more work to do to underpin our measures and our OKRs to make sure that it really truly focused on customer outcome and customer value, but just using it as a prioritization element and having it as a core mindset that we need to double down on has been really good. Empowered teams talks to the leadership changes and really trusting the experts here. Leader, step away, trust the experts to do the work. Again, quite uncomfortable for a lot of leaders that aren't used to this sort of way of working, but another really, really important. And then trust and transparency. Absolute crystal clear box in terms of the activity that is happening, and that again comes with discomfort for some teams. So I think in terms of mindset and culture, being very specific on what good looks like. And then the language changes to signal the fact that tomorrow is no more and we're moving to a new. You know, we got a delivery practice, and there are chapters in that practice, and the chapters have got missions that we are building, chapter capability. Like, even that is new language for Suncorp, and it's quite important to kind of signal the changes and the fact that it is different. It was one that we debated quite a bit. Do we change all this language? Because it's probably easier if we keep the language the same and we just ask people to do things differently. But we kind of quickly agreed that no, that's not the right thing to do. We do want to change the way that we talk about delivery so that it is an impactful shift.
And to pick up on that point, language is so critical. It might seem self-evident, some of the mindsets we land on, but credit to our people. They were like, when you say pace, how much pace are we talking about? And what exactly does that mean? And when you say empowerment, how empowered are we? And where does it instantly gets you really focused on the language of that cultural change. So credit to our people. They definitely held us to task around the language we were coming up with, and made sure we defined every of the degree of some of those mindsets.
And I think one that maybe Jodie's Pioneer Tribe did was learnings, right? So that's failure learnings, and it's all about, you know, psychological safety and how do we celebrate our learnings. And I know it's become part of the standard showcasing. When you showcase at the end of period, it's not just about what you delivered, but we want to know your learnings. What were your top learnings, and how do we celebrate it, and how do we embed that into the cadence? So I think that's another important word label that's been born out of this change, which signals a pretty important cultural shift.
Any specific tips on influencing leadership mindsets out of that?
Oh, this is hard, team. Like, it is hard. I think that, again, this is another one where you cannot strive for perfection. So my approach here has been be really, really clear on what good looks like in the model, and the momentum mindset to do that. We've been really focused on bringing external thought leadership into the organisation too, to kind of showcase what good leadership looks like. My then approach to really double down on the leadership mindset that needs change is to ensure that I have a fact and data based basis to actually have that conversation with them, and the metrics that Will shared is fundamental to that, right? So the mindset and the leadership is always going to, if it's not there and it's not working, it shows itself in the metrics, and the team health. It shows itself in poor throughput. It shows itself in increased lead time. It shows itself in those sort of metrics, and I always start there. It's a fact-based, not a opinion-based position to be able to talk about the sort of changes that you need to achieve. So I think having those metrics is absolutely gold to have targeted fact-based conversations around how do you have to influence leadership to think differently.
And picking up on that, because it's such an important topic, I think the guidance around invite over inflict is a good one. I've seen this time and time again. Leaders are going to go on the journey at their own pace, and you've got to keep inviting them. Sometimes the first invitation, the second invitation, the third invitation, they still haven't gone on the journey, but they will go on the journey, and everyone goes on the journey at their own time. But the other thing I think that can help accelerate that, and Lauren's a prime example of this, if you start to take something that they work on a day-to-day basis and start to mess with it a little bit, it forces them to really get their head around what this change is going to be. So that might be simply shifting the cadence a little bit, or talking a little bit about the ways of working. And what I mean by that is, if it's something that sits outside of their world, then they're not going to get their head around it. There's nothing like having to own some of it that really, and it's that whole idea of, it's hard to think yourself into a new way of acting. You've got to sort of change what you do, and then that helps you with the mindset shift. So the one hack I would put there is when you can start to change a little bit at what people do. You'll be amazed at how quickly they start to want to learn and get their head around it, and actually become quite expert, as is evidenced by Lawrence.
Change by stealth. They don't even know that you're changing it. And then all of a sudden, poof, look, everything's different.
Oh, that's brilliant. Marie, was there any other key questions that we haven't covered off? I'm conscious we've only got a few minutes left on the session.
Maybe the last one is from Jody. Knowing what you know now, would you have reviewed the PMO and the funding model and all that stuff before implementing the tribes and the ways of working? This is a nugget question.
That's a loaded question. Do you know what? My answer to that is yes. In the context of the fact that I know that it is the biggest inhibitor to us being able to achieve real change here. But then my also answer to it is no. And the reason for that is I just don't think organisationally we were ready. I don't think we were ready. And taking the first step and getting the value stream set up is a pretty monumental change. Shifting the way we govern and fund work is equally monumental at Suncorp. And I think, this is something that needs time and a little bit of pain to actually get the case for change and the need to change there as well. So I would have loved to do it earlier, Jody. I think that's the answer to my yes. But I think the no is realistically, we needed to be in the model to learn, to experience the pain, to actually have a really clear burning platform across the organisation and their commitment to change. And I mean, Maria and Mark are well in it with us now, and we haven't even got there yet. We will though. But it's really the backbone of an organisation. It really is, and it touches enterprise wide. It's not just my team. It's the tech teams. It's the risk teams. It's finance. It's truly kind of. It's a lot. It's a lot to be able to influence.
Thank you very much, Lauren and Will. We're at time. I have to say personally, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you and continuing to work with you. Personally being involved and seeing the journey, seeing the transformation, seeing where you're at and the things that we're working on now. I know it's great things for Suncorp. So yes, I'm really looking forward to seeing what's next. I'm hoping maybe in a 6 months time, 12 months time, we can do another one of these and we can talk a little bit deeper on what we've learned again. But yeah, so just wanted to thank you for making the time, enabling that to be a warts and all conversation. So thank you for the openness and transparency there. And yeah, look forward to connecting with you guys tomorrow. And for our audience, if you're like me, you may be a reflector and questions might come up or thoughts may come up. Feel free to reach out to Maria or I on LinkedIn and we'll do our best to connect back to Lauren and Will and see if we can get those questions or thoughts or comments answered for you. But I thank you all for making the time this afternoon and hope you have a great evening. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.